So let's take it right back to the beginning. Where were you when you found out you won this role?
Yeah, I was in my old school. So I was in my old comprehensive school.
Yeah.
So I went back to visit. I was going back to visit my teachers in the sixth form block. And I was in their office and I got a call. So I'd been previously, I'd self-taped and then I auditioned. I met the guys, like the team. And I was in in their office, which is this sort of really sort of small office for all my sixth form teachers. And I got along with them in school. Maybe I was a swot, maybe I was just a naughty boy who just was too cheeky really for my own good, but I sort of was in their office and
I don't know many people who go back to their old school. Just
I know, I was going to say, I sounded a bit lame,
it's a bit niche,
really. It's
but
a bit,
you know,
sort of, yeah,
we'll let it
that
slide.
says a lot about me. So I was going to visit, yeah, maybe let's not put that in.
Yeah.
But
You're really cool and really edgy.
I was actually in Africa.
Discovering
I was
yourself.
on a safari, and but no, I was in the school, and I got a call from my agent, and it sort of went in my pocket, and it's like, you know, when your agent calls, it's either good news or bad news, and I think in that moment I was like, it was very soon after the meeting, and I was like, oh, it's gotta be something in my gut told me it was good news. Not that I was expecting to get it still, but it was good news. Like I sort of
must have been...
let me just leave, and I got the call, but to be in my old school was kind of mad because I really liked school.
Yeah.
I sort of had a good time, and I my best friends for life I met there. So I sort of always associate that with school, not necessarily like the sort of learning aspect. You know what I mean? It was just such a beautiful moment where I found out, because then I spent the rest of the day. I remember really vividly driving from my house, from the school to my house, which is like 10 minutes up the road, just beeping my horn and just in that moment going like, I never thought I'd ever get cast as something on the telly, like never be able to be trusted with a role, you know, a role in general, let alone something like someone like Colin. So I remember going in and I went into the house and I sort of went, Mom, I got it. And she was like, no. And it was just a real moment. We just couldn't get over it. It was really just so cool, and bless my mother. She's the best, and she's the reason I kind of do it really, because just to make her happy, it makes me happy. Also, I do it for myself.
Yeah, totally. Do it for yourself too.
But doing it for my mother is, you know, always a real gift.
Yeah.
Because when she's happy, I'm happy.
If you look back now to that first day on set, where it's your first TV role, right? Which is just, blows my mind. Like, you're basically nominated for a Virgin Media BAFTA TV award for your first ever role, which is incredible. Well, on that first day on that set, did you have any self-doubt? Especially given the fact that It's a Sin is about very tough subject matter as well. Like, did you feel a lot of pressure? Like, how did you process self-doubt in those moments?
The first proper scene I filmed was kind of in a similar situation to this. It was like in a corner of a pub, and I don't know if like anyone remembers from the show, but there's a bit where Colin is sort of in a pub and he sees the guys from the Pink Palace for the first time, and he's in like a corner, like watching these two men kissing. I think Russell wrote in the script, you know, it's almost as if he's seeing the world for the first time. You know, he's seeing these two men just kissing each other just out in the open, you know, which is something he's never seen before. He's seeing Roscoe, who's just himself, being himself and being proud of himself. And you know, that was the first thing we filmed, so I was very nervous. I was really super red. And like, because that's how I get.
A bit clammy.
A bit clammy, it was sweaty, moist.
Stunning. Just when you want to be moist on your first day at work.
Yeah. And I was very, very red, like just nervous. But Peter loved that, our director loved that, because he would be, right? Like Colin would be, and I feel like a lot of and that kind of never went away throughout the whole filming, because there was always scenes which was really difficult and provided its own challenge. And you know, because you know, it's worth saying I was figuring out what to do in front of a camera for the first time throughout most of it. Figuring that out, and also playing Colin and trying to bring the emotional side of it. There was a lot of rawness to it that probably I never intended to bring, but just came because of it was my first job. Yeah. You know what I mean? Things that came just naturally, and you know, in a way, in my head, it was always like bad. It was always I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so red. Like, you know what I mean? But actually,
looking back at it, you'd be like,
I'm like, oh gosh, I wish we really thought it. But yeah.
I mean, also TV shows like It's a Sin and must-see moments like Colin's egg diagnosis scene are so impactful because they really connect audiences and communities. They get everyone talking. They change conversations. And you must have had so many amazing conversations and very eye-opening conversations preparing for the role as well. What stories that you heard during that preparation time really stayed with you?
Yeah, we did a lot of research. We did a lot of talking with Russell and Peter. We actually did a sort of week before we filmed where we spent like basically every day together in a room just kind of talking. You know, and we could talk about anything, and the conversation was very open. Sometimes it would be quite personal conversations. Sometimes it would be then about the work and about the time and about the period. And they were really helpful because then we were talking about sort of references and things to watch and things to, you know, Russell has amazing stories, you know, so many stories that didn't really make the cut in It's a Sin purely because, you know, he had to be really selective in the end because obviously he was making a drama. But, you know, for me, the most useful tool for me is always watching stuff. I'm quite a visual kind of person. I love seeing things because then I always like kind of feel like I've benefited from it in a way because I feel like I've sort of seen it and it's in my head. I watched a documentary called Killer in the Village, which is a Horizon documentary, and it's about Greenwich Village right at the beginning. So he was like, you know, it's like right at the beginning of the 80s, I think even like sort of late 70s, and it's when these people are getting ill. They don't know what it is. And at one point the narrator even says like, you know, this thing, perhaps it's a virus. Like they don't have a clue. They did when you know when in the show when they say like they didn't know what it was when they're talking about it being psittacosis and stuff. That is that you know, when you speak to people and when you see these documentaries, that is actually what it was. They did not have a clue. They thought it was something you got from gorillas or all these rumors, you know. And it's there was one patient in particular in the documentary, and he's kind of fine. One day they go in and he's kind of talking and he's going, you know, yeah, I'm quite ill. I'm not feeling good. I'm really feeling awful. And then they revisit him again later on, and he can't essentially he has no words. Like his word, and if he does come out with things, it's coming out in kind of not in a linear way. Like I think he's talking about the ceiling and stuff, and his mother's just asked, you know, she's asking him questions about him, and he just can't speak. And you know, that's how much it affected the body. So for me then, going back to Colin and Colin's journey, so like, you know, very much in episode 3 and leading up to the moment like in question, it was always taking on, seeing that was just always so important, because especially when I read the script, like Russell wrote those lines where he's like, there is no person in France, like those lines where it doesn't make any sense. And I was reading it, I was like, I don't know how the hell to say this. It doesn't make any sense. But then as soon as I watched that, it all kind of made sense.
I think that kind of research and seeing that obviously then really informed your performance as well. And that is what makes this such an amazing moment that is nominated for Virgin Media's Must See Moment Award. I mean, I still think about that moment and like all the time. I even had a conversation with my friends the other week and we were talking about it, and she was like, I think about it probably most days. Like it's left that much of an impact on me, seeing that moment of lived history put on our screens and seen on, you know, Channel 4, which is so extraordinary. And that's what's so amazing about that moment, and it's voted for by fans. And I feel like so many people got behind that character, felt so bereft when he eventually died as well. When you saw the little symptoms coming in, you were like, no, not Colin, why is this happening to Colin? Like it felt like it was like happening to your friend or someone you knew. And I think that's what's so powerful about your performance. So getting stuck into that moment itself, so the Colins Diagnosis scene, how difficult was it to film those scenes in the hospital particularly?
So difficult, like difficult in a way for me where I was so worried. I was really panicking about like sort of doing it justice. That's what it is really. I think you just want to do it well. You know what I mean? You want to be able to like, when the time comes to shoot that scene, you want to be able to deliver really, whatever that means.
I think it must also be really difficult to film those scenes and separate your own mindset and your own mental health from the character in a way, because it's such a difficult thing to carry around with you, that level of emotion.
Yeah.
Because when Lydia West, who plays Jill, came on the podcast, we talked quite in depth about how difficult it was to cope with and manage her mental health whilst also dealing with really difficult subject matter. And she said that the scene that she filmed with you in the hospital was the moment where she was like, oh my God, I just need to call my mum. And she just went out, called her mum, and had that moment and just cried it all out, processed it, and then was able to move on again. Because you do need that support, don't you? And I think you found that support from the cast, who must have been so supportive in those moments where you're like, this is really difficult. How do I actually get through this?
Yeah. Well, Lydia, like, you know, first of all, it's worth saying that her performance is phenomenal. You know, like it's the type of performance where I feel like we'll be talking about it for years. I will be talking about it for years, and I feel so privileged to have just acted alongside her really in the show. And you know, she really had, I think, the hardest task out of everyone, because you know what Lydia had to do was Lydia had to see everything. She had to witness all the deaths. You know, it wasn't just me and Ollie. It was the lonely Joy you see at the end of episode 5. It was, you know, it was all the scenes in the hospital, and you know, there was a day where it was in between setups, in between takes, and you know, there's a lot of waiting around sometimes as an actor, because everyone's got to do their job, the crew's got to set up for the next scene and all this kind of stuff. So you know, there's always time, and I was sitting in the bed just in between takes, as you do, just sort of lying there, and we just done the scene where Colin sort of in some, you know, in like a coma, and his eyes are just sort of wandering, and Lydia comes in when I was just like there, and Lydia comes in and she just sort of like puts her head like on my lap, and she's like, oh, can I just be here a sec? And you know, she got upset, and I think it's that thing of, in that moment, like, you know, I would sort of give her a hug and supported her, and that's what we were like as a cast. We were there for each other, and you know, we really supported one another and comforted each other, because it was those days, and especially for Lydia, because her job was mammoth in this show. You know, we all supported her, and I, you know, and there was also times where Lydia would support me. You know, when you go through tough times in the, you know, during the process, but that's what we were like. We were a family. We were a family that was there for each other, and the love was so real. And I think sometimes it can sound like almost ridiculous that there was this level of love on set, but it just was, because it was a first time for all of us. And even if it wasn't the first time on set, it was the first time really doing a show that was dealing with a subject matter of this sort of weight, you know. So yeah, basically Lydia West is,
she's a goddess.
She's a goddess. She really is. She's a proper goddess.
She is.